artist. It's Miss Cape. Welcome to your 2024 Buddy Project. Hopefully, you recognize this colorful dot tree that we see here on our screens. Today, we are going to be talking about this next Buddy Project that we're working on alongside of our buddies. So, go ahead and sit back and let's get started. For our buddy project this year, we're going to be taking a look at something called color theory. Color theory is something that you've been learning since kindergarten. It's actually just the study and use of colors and how they connect and mix with each other. You've been learning about color theory alongside of this awesome picture right here, which is the color wheel. If you're a little bit unsure of what color theory is, think back to our original color families that you've been learning since day one, which would be your first color family of primary colors. Of course, your red, yellow, and blue. And then, of course, after that, we learned about secondary colors, which is orange, purple, and green. Now, my older buddies, you're probably sitting there thinking to yourself that you do know of a few other types of color families that you've learned over the years. But the new one that we're going to talk about today, and my hopefully third graders are a little bit more familiar with this because we actually finished up learning about this a few months ago. This one's going to be called monochromatic. And if you can all say monochromatic, mono actually means one, and chromatic stands for color. So by looking at those meanings alone, we should be able to tell that monochromatic means one color scheme or one color involved. This picture right here is just maybe what you might see if you've ever done some painting in your house. But this is an example of what a monochromatic color scheme would look like. It's using one color and you have lights and darks of those colors. These lights and darks are typically known as tints and shades. Now you can see in this video, this person's making obviously a tint because they're making a lighter version of their color. On this page, you're going to see some different examples of monochromatic art pieces that exist out there. Obviously, we're working with a purple color scheme, a green color scheme, and a blue color scheme. Now, what does that mean for you and your buddy? Your buddy and you will be joined together to create your own monochromatic dot that we will end up placing onto our dot tree. Now, these are hopefully going to stay up for the next school year. So just like our dots went up last year at the end of the year, we're going to get them up in time for our art show. That way we can show them to our families whenever our families come up to visit our artwork. And then we'll take these off next year and set up a new buddy project. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, before you and your partner get started, it's important to remember that when we're working with another partner or another artist, we're working collaboratively, which means that you're working as a team. This shouldn't be one buddy doing all the work and the other buddy just sitting there. You guys should be either taking turns working on your project or working at the same time. Just make sure you're really communicating what you want your dot to look like with your buddy. Now, each class does have an assigned color. If you are a class that has colors labeled on your dots, you're going to want to make sure that you match your paint with the color that's labeled. Now, if you were a class that maybe received one color on your bag, for example, I pulled out this class that all was labeled as purple, then you'll know that you'll be using the colors that came with your class pack. So again, if you were a class that maybe have different colors, double check that color code to make sure you're matching the color scheme for your monochromatic color family. Now we're going to be working with crayons first. You're going to want to choose crayons that match your color scheme. So for this one in particular, we're working with yellow green. So I went to find crayons that were either yellow green or yellow green combined. And there were actually a few different colors in the pack that I thought would work well. You'll also notice that I tried to make at least 2 different watercolor paints for your particular color. So you should have a lighter and a darker version. Some of you may even have 3, just depending on what color that is. If it works best for you to draw in pencil before tracing with your crayons, of course, go ahead and use a pencil first. I'm going to go ahead and just use my crayons. And when you're using your crayons to design your dot leaf, you want to make sure you're pushing down pretty hard to make sure that this sticks and shows through. So I'm going to start off with just a simple leaf design on this one, maybe starting with the stem at the end. And I'm going to go up on one side and match it to the other side. Now, I particularly like to not take up too much space. That way I have some room in the background for whatever type of design I'd like to fill it with. And don't forget, of course, to add some veins to your leaves. This is how they get water. There we go. Now let's talk about the background. It could be anything from pattern. Maybe you and your buddy, this is where you could decide to take turns and say, hey, I'll do this side if you want to work on this side. Or maybe just talk together and decide a game plan. For my background on this one, I think I'm going to do just some different types of lines. And again, we want to make sure we're pushing pretty hard with our tool. This is going to help that watercolor paint effect kind of take over later. Maybe I'll do another pattern, maybe. And let's go in and add a little bit more. Maybe some dots with this one. All right. Then when you're ready, your final step will be to add your watercolor paint. And this paint already has the water in it, so you don't have to add any more. I always suggest, just like in the art room, paint with the lighter color choice first, and that's gonna help you moving forward. Depending on what color you have, something like this yellow green in particular is gonna be on the lighter side, and that's okay. So if you need to add a coat or two, this paper is thick enough, it should be able to withstand it. This paint is thin enough as well that you should be able to brush right over top of your crayon designs.